It's 6 o'clock and we had a drink, so.
So, would you like to stay in or also need to go in?
Yes.
You will see. I will leave with you. Yes, yeah, okay, good. Let me, yes. When I stay, I'll stay. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Maybe. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the side event From Evidence to Policy Action, establishing a science policy panel to promote the sound management of chemicals and waste and the prevention of pollution. My name is Tessa Goverse. I am the principal coordinator of the Secretariat of the Ad Hoc Open-Ended Working Group on the Science Policy Panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste, in short, SPP OEWG. And I'm very pleased to welcome you to this side event tonight. We will focus tonight in this event, which is organized by UNEP in collaboration with the BRS Secretariat, the Government of the United Kingdom, and the Geneva Environment Network, on the establishment of a science policy panel that is currently ongoing, as well as the relevance of this future panel for the cluster of chemicals and waste conventions. I also would like to mention that this event is an element on the road to OEW 3.2, which is a webinar series facilitated by the Geneva Environment Network, and therefore the event will also be broadcasted live, and we even might get some questions from an online audience here. The event will consist of 3 parts. We will start with opening remarks by the Executive Director of UNEP and the Executive Secretary of the BRS Convention, followed by a panel discussion and a Q&A session, and finally a closing when we will be joined by the Government of Uruguay, the Chair of the OEW SPP process, and the Government of the United Kingdom. So, without further ado, let me now give the floor to Ms. Inger Andersen, Executive Director of UNEP. Inger, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think I'll disappear behind this thing. So let me borrow one. Very much. Is one working now? Yes, yes. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you. I know I'm competing with a very, very nice reception, so we better make this interesting, Tessa and Rolf and panelists here. But look, what could be more interesting than trying to figure out how we're going to make sure that there is science that is available writ large for the broad spectrum of pollution and waste and, yes, chemicals. I want to thank the United Kingdom. I want to thank the Geneva Environment Network and, of course, the Secretariat of the BRS for helping organize this event. The truth is that for decades, the BRS conventions have truly protected our human health and our environment from the risks that we know are out there on hazardous chemicals and waste, including POPs, persistent organic pollutants. And many parties to these conventions have adopted at-home decisions, regulations, legislation, standards, etc., that help put to life what is decided in these august halls. And so they've also worked on strengthening synergies across and between various conventions, which matters a lot. And I'm really, really grateful for that hard work. Science to UNEP and to our proud collection of MEAs that we have the great honor to host, including, of course, the BRS. Science is what underpins everything we understand and everything we do. And so it is, whilst each of these conventions, and there are 17 in all that we are hosting, has its science advisory board, its SAPSTA, whatever it might be called, its scientific committee. That committee provides science to that convention, but may not do deep horizon watching beyond the immediacy of the issue with which the convention is based, because it just can't do it, because it can't do everything. And so establishing a science policy panel. It is a baby without a name yet, right? So we just call it SPP. But the point is, we have IPCC, and we understand what that is. IPBES, we understand what that is, and then we have this thing that is yet to be born. But establishing that really matters, because the IPCC is not in the treaty of UNFCCC. It is independent. It speaks to science, and then member states are going to have to decide what they wish to do with that science. And they decide that not inside the panel, but inside the COP. That's how it works. Similarly, for IPBES, it's completely independent of the Convention for Biodiversity, the Convention for Migratory Species, all the other nature and oceans related conventions. However, when this good science comes out, it is then up to the various COPs and meetings to decide, is this a COP decision that we should take a look at because the science says X, Y, or Z? And so that's important, because that is sort of lacking here, that deeper horizon looking at what comes between the various conventions and what is a new thing that we need to be mindful of in the policies, in the science policy space of chemicals, waste, and pollution. And that is why UNEA, back in 2022, said, look, we need to establish such a panel. And they established this resolution to have this negotiation. And I'm standing here in front of the very able chair, who you will hear from shortly, Goody, who will tell us how she has been seeking to navigate that space with 193 member states seeking to define this. This is not and negotiations for a multilateral environmental agreement. And there's some confusion. This is a negotiation for a science policy body. And that's important. We need this panel because the crisis of pollution, waste, and chemical exposure is intensifying. There are more of us on this planet. And we are very good at innovating, which is a good thing. This morning, the Chinese minister said, we need high quality development and we need high quality protection. And to do so, we need good science. I quote him because I so agree. And so getting understanding of what it is that pollution does to our environment, what it does to the planet, while not vilifying it, but having high quality protection is critical. And so we do not want to have harmful exposure to our bodies or our planet, but we also recognize that chemicals are part of our modern lives. So how do we make this all happen? We also recognize that our own wastes and pollution are part of our existence, especially in conglomerated settings. So how do we deal with that? Well, this is where this panel will come in. Now, done right, this panel will support a much more informed, a much more coordinated, a much more science-based hopefully, decision-making that it'll put out there. Here's the science. You, the COPs, the various national or bilateral or more than multilateral settings, decide what you want to do with the science. What is it? What are the policies that you wish to establish? But to make all of this happen, it's critical that the panel is credible, that the panel is inclusive, and that the panel is able to evolve to an evolving landscape and adapt to that. So this panel has to shine a light where maybe the global community may need to pay attention because they're busy with so many other things. And it has to make existing solutions more visible. This is about another visibility here. And it has to create policy relevant science by considering national context because not everything is the same, including how chemicals are used and the extent to which valuable alternatives exist. So as we know, because we've seen this with the other two science policy panels, when good science comes out, then we begin to see national strengthening of regulatory frameworks. We see more sustainable practices. We see new exploration of new knowledge and science at the national level. All of that is what we want to see on waste, on chemicals, and on pollution writ large. And above all, of course, since waste and chemicals and so on are part of our economies as we know it, we have to have understanding of how can our economies flourish and retain the benefits of those products without the unwelcome side effects. That's really the conversation that we need to have in the context of the science itself. And so just a few weeks out in Uruguay, in Punta del Este, our dear hosts, Uruguay, will be opening the doors for what has to be the final negotiation round, where we have to land this thing. Now, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I ask all delegates to understand that not everything, IPCC is more than 35 years old at this point. It takes time, it is step by step, but if we don't take the first step, we will never take the second. And so at this point, it is critical that we land an agreement that establishes this panel and the basic elements around it. Much that follows will be done because member states will insist on it, but we won't have it all on day one. That's just how it works. And that will allow us then to put this science out, not us, but the SPP, which will hopefully then have a name, to put all of this science out there so that the BRS conventions, the Minamata conventions, the nature-related conventions, desertification, and all can take this and say, aha, in view of this, we may wish to have this or that COP decision on this or that element inside of our program of work. That is what we have to do. So I ask you all who are involved in this to look at what will it look like to get this done. The world is expecting it of us. The world wants it of us. The world wants the science, and the world wants it yesterday because the world wants to safeguard our planet and the world wants to protect human health. That's all I wanted to say, because when we do this, then we are making our lives better and our planet better for everyone, everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Inger, for these very inspiring words on the panel that will hopefully see the light later this year. And then I have the pleasure of turning the floor to Rolf Payet, the Executive Secretary of the BRS Conventions, who will also shine his light and give his thoughts on the importance of this panel and of collaboration with the conventions. Please go ahead.
Much. Thank you so much. And I know it's very late, so I won't speak long, but I just wanted to share that this, I'll put it here. Okay. This is the right place where we need to discuss the science policy panel, because this is where we've heard since yesterday about the importance of science for the Stockholm Convention, for the Rotterdam Convention, and for the Basel Convention. And for me, when I look at the whole landscape in the puzzle, if you had a jigsaw puzzle, there's only one piece missing, and that is our science policy panel. We need to bring this information to the fore. We need to have more information. We need to make this information visible, as Inga has said. So I want to share with you this evening 3 key messages from our perspective as we land this science policy panel, which I'm also joining Inga in urging you, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to Uruguay and seal this deal. Let's make it happen, because this will help our work. It will help our work. It will help us to understand the needs of countries, to understand the priorities of countries, and at the same time, bring the science to the forefront. So the first point I wanted to share with you is that there is a rich body of scientific and technical work. It's amazing, and we've seen it in only this small exhibition here, but the amount of universities and scientists involved in trying to keep our planet safe, or trying to tell us this water is not good, this soil is not productive enough, the air we are breathing are problems and we need to take action. This is something that we can build on. And I think the BRS conventions has really given value to those work. And when we meet at the Pop Rock, at the CRC, Pop Rock for the, well, you all know because you are BRS colleagues, Pop Rock and CRC, we sit down and we look at the state of the science. And one of the things that always sinks my heart down is we don't have enough science in the global south. And one of the things I'm expecting that the SPP will help incentivize is more science in the global south. How many of us are dreaming to be scientists, dreaming to be chemists, toxicologists? How many of us, how many of our young people? Yes, they want to do apps, they want to do surfing and all this, but how many of them are really interested in science? And I think the Science Policy Panel will play an important role, I'm really convinced, in really reinventing the importance of science to our youth. And this week we have the youth organizations here with us. And I've been telling them, science is important. Second point, we have gained invaluable experience in operating inclusive, balanced, and effective science bodies. And we're sharing this knowledge with the SPP Secretariat. And we've been doing that since the very beginning. We've been lending our staff, we've been lending our expertise, and we've been also benefiting from all your expertise here today, supporting this very important process. And I think we need to continue doing that. We need to continue and take that expertise to Punta del Este as we set up this science policy panel. And as Inga said, this is when the work begins. The work is, the science policy panel is just the little tip or the starting point of the race, so to speak. So this will be the start, and we have so much work ahead of us in really developing the science landscape for chemicals. We also have a lot of experience in the procedures, in the rules of procedure, in the operations, in the guidelines, in engaging with the scientific community, and we've been sharing that with you. And we will be there on the day one that the SPP becomes effective to lend that support. And I'm sure everybody here who have been involved in this process for many, many years now will be very happy to lend a hand to ensure that our science policy panel hits the ground running rather than takes a long time to get off the ground, because I think it's important for us. Thirdly, and I will stop there, we have a roadmap on science policy engagement. So we've been thinking about this, and the COP has been thinking about this for a long time. And it's been something that has been emphasized not only at the technical level, but also at the political level, recognizing that we need to bridge the gap between the science and policy. And while it might now look easy, when I started climate change, it was so complicated to bridge the gap between what we are doing in the climate change science and the policy. Now I think policymakers talk about climate change as if, we've known about it for hundreds of years. But the challenge I've seen in my line of work in chemicals, it's been really hard, but we've made progress. As you know, we took our high-level segment to Stockholm plus 50 to link the issue with the broader human development agenda. We've been working and partnering with different organizations, trying really to break this barrier that I've seen in understanding the impact of pollution and how we can develop rational, coherent and effective policies that address pollution. And of course, at the same time, that help to stimulate the economy, but the right economy, the productive economy, where you have healthy people, healthy workers, and of course, healthy environment. And I think this is something that we've seen the transformation, and we will spend over the next 2 days with ministers that will be joining us. We have over 80 ministers joining us who will be doing that kind of policy work, and hopefully that will be backed by the science. So before I end, I just wanted to say that we have so much to share and so much work has been done. And as Inga said, decades of work, decades of passionate individuals who are some of them in the room. But sometimes I'm sad because we have a lot of us getting older. And I like to see more young people engage in this important work. So if the youth organization is here, I'm echoing again, we need more young people in the chemical science business, in the waste science business, because this is the only way we're gonna solve the challenges that we have before us. So with those few words, I wish you a wonderful evening and enjoy the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rolf. And indeed, the relationship with the BRS conventions will be very important and hopefully also very fruitful once the panel is established. Thank you also for your unwavering support and for encouraging, indeed, young scientists. We will need them for the panel. I know our speakers in the opening are very, very busy people, so please allow them to leave the podium with a very big clap. Thank you so much, Inger. Thank you so much, Rolf. And as we started a little later, let's immediately move on to the second segment of our meeting or event today, starting with a quick brief and an update on the current status of the OEWG process, which will then also be followed by a panel discussion. For those who are perhaps a little bit less familiar with the SPP process, as the Executive Director mentioned in her speech, the work of the OEWG actually started in 2022 when a open-ended working group was established to develop proposals for a science policy panel through a resolution by the UN Environment Assembly. The ambition was to have the work completed by 2024, and it was also considered that this work could be done in 3 rounds of negotiations. So last year, June, exactly in this venue, the working group convened to get together for the 3rd session. Unfortunately, the working group was not able to finalize the work. And the beginning of this year, it was agreed that the resumed session would take place in June in Punta del Este in Uruguay. It was also agreed that this meeting would take place back-to-back with the intergovernmental meeting that the Executive Director has been asked through the resolution to convene upon the completion of the work by the ad hoc open-ended working group. So we're looking at OEW 3.2 in June, back-to-back with the intergovernmental meeting. The working group has been working very, very hard on what's called the foundational document that sets out the objective, the functions, the operating principles, the architecture of the panel. And the objective of the panel is to enhance the science policy interface for the sound management of chemicals and waste and prevent pollution for the protection of human health and the environment. The functions of the panel, there will principally be horizon scanning, assessments, knowledge management, information sharing, and also capacity building to strengthen these 4 other functions. The focus of the resumed session will be very much in finalizing the work on the foundational document so that the panel can be established. The focus will be on what's essential to establish the panel. The working group will also finalize the draft rules of procedure and the draft decisions for the intergovernmental meeting. But other documents and policies and processes that have been looked at by the working group in previous sessions will be suggested to be forwarded to the panel itself, because in the end, it will be the panel itself that need to adopt its policies and procedures. So with that little bit of background, I would like to invite our panelists for today to come to the podium. I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Adalberto Maluf, National Secretary of Urban Environment and Environmental Quality at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Brazil. Welcome. I also would like to invite Monica Stankiewicz, Executive Secretary of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. And I see you laughing. I might not have said your name correctly. Sorry, Monica. And I also would like to invite Dr. Peter Dawson, Chair of the Persistent Organic Pollutants Review Committee and Principal Scientist at the Environmental Protection Authority in New Zealand. Welcome. Our first question is for you, Monica. Could you perhaps elaborate on the mechanisms through which the Minamata Conventions facilitate information sharing and support to adopt policy options for effective chemicals and waste management? What are the kind of methods or platforms that you are using?
Thank you so much and good day, everyone. I hope you are enjoying BRS meeting, and thank you, of course, for organizing this event. It's very timely. You may be aware that the Minamata Convention COP will be held in November this year. So my expectation is that the meeting in Uruguay will be very successful, and we can already at our COP during this year reflect, first recognize the establishment of the panel, but then start initiating process how we can collaborate on which topics. I mean, regarding your question, of course, it's a long answer. So I have picked several examples to give you an idea how Minamata Convention works in terms of generating information and knowledge and how this supports policy making. As many other conventions, we have a so-called effectiveness evaluation of the convention. We are currently doing such a first effectiveness evaluation, and while the convention really in its text does not prescribe what's the purpose of it, it does prescribe on which information it is to be based on. And this information is levels of mercury and mercury compounds in humans, in environment, and environment including biota. And the task is to arrange for comparable data to support the effectiveness evaluation. And there is an ad hoc scientific group that works on it, and the process is to finish by 2027. So I think it's quite relevant, as the outcome of the effectiveness evaluation may also inform a future cooperation between the convention and a panel to be established. What I would also realize that we have in our convention 2 articles, one on information exchange and another on monitoring, research and development, that provides quite a comprehensive list of issues related to mercury compounds, which parties at the time of negotiating treaty consider that they are relevant for implementation of the convention, for future development of the convention. And this could be a good starting point to consider how a future panel could support policy making based on those very detailed and long list of areas. And what I would also like to mention, that you have to realize the Minamata Convention is still relatively young. We have had 5 COPs only. So while, of course, when you look at the documents at the convention, may seem that you see everything, but reality is we need support in many areas. And maybe one area where we have been quite successful and exhausted the need for information is on alternative technologies for mercury use in production. That's an example where we really have been doing very well. There was a demand-driven processes to generate this information. And to finish, interesting feature of Minamata Convention community is that there is so-called international conference on mercury as a global pollutant. There is no formal association between convention and the conference, but of course we benefit from this global scientific community that basically do mercury science, and it could be quite an advantage to have such a expertise available for a future panel or a Minamata cooperation with a future panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And for the next question, I would like to immediately turn to you, Adalberto. Could you provide maybe specific examples of how the BRS has facilitated the sharing of information in your country? I mean, how was it used? Can you speak perhaps to some impact of their uptake?
Thank you, Tessa. I would like to, first congratulate you all for bringing this topic here. Brazil is a big supporter of the panel. I hope that's somehow we can get a good agreement and a panel that can not only share, scientific cooperation, capacity building, but also help us to understand the impact on health, on environment, on biodiversity. I come from a country that just a couple of years ago, we had a president that didn't believe too much in science, even while we passed through a difficult pandemic with the COVID. And he made a lot of people don't believe in vaccine, don't believe in universities and science. And more than 700,000 Brazilians died, 3-4 times more than the global average, because they made them not believe in science. So we really feel in our hearts, in lives of people, how not believing in science can be challenging. That's why the cooperation with BRS and other conventions have been really nice to us. First, because it helps us to understand what to do, where to start, where to prioritize our work. For example, we had cooperations with, GF, UNEP, UNNDP, also Minamata Convention with our MIA. So we were able to do our updated plan on the Stockholm, our NEP, the Stockholm implementation. So it helped us to see, which are the pollutants we have to start on, how to do the inventories, which type of stakeholders needs to be engaged, and also bring funding to do it, because we came after a government that didn't believe in science. So imagine if they would believe in environment or education or cultural activities. So we had zero budget to do anything. So this cooperation was much further than only the scientific cooperation. It really helped us to do. And with those inventories, with those studies, in our reality, because sometimes we see a lot of the studies that come from Europe or other countries, but the reality that when they come to developing countries, but especially tropical warm countries, the impacts are different. The exposure that we have to the chemicals, even the impact of those hazard substances are even worse down there. So it's important that we study using local universities, using local partners, and having this helped us a lot to give the visibility we needed in order to get the political momentum to do it. And for sure, it was crucial for us to get to where we are now with, for example, the launch of the national network to monitor PFAS and later pesticides, or, to do the PCB inventories that we thought there would be 50,000 tons, and we realized we have 450,000 tons of PCB, among many other areas. So for sure, these cooperations were crucial for us to know where to start and what to prioritize and how to do it.
Thank you very much for that specific example. And let me turn to you, Peter. Could you share some instances whereby BRS and Minamata conventions have successfully highlighted previously overlooked, or in the theme of today's COP, invisible solutions to chemicals and waste management challenges?
Okay, yes, so I think I can think straight off of 2 examples really I actually spoke to when I gave my report on pop rock to the plenary today. So the first one was the issue of long-range environmental transport, and particularly in respect of POPs that are present as additives in plastics, and the question of whether the long-range transport of plastic waste itself can be considered a vector for the long-range transport of the POP. I think we have considered in the past POPs that are used as plastic additives, but we've never really looked at that aspect. that is the actual long-range transport to remote regions facilitated by the actual movement of the plastic. Another one we looked at a few years back was, well, and of course, these are subjects that we just touched on, and as we'll hear later, will be much better if there was an independent science policy panel that could get into some of these matters in more depth. Was the question was the interaction between climate change and exposures to POPs, and whether some of the effects of climate change enhance those exposures. And the other one that we've just submitted a report to the COP on, and it really does actually go right to the question of making visible the invisible, is how to identify when POPs are present in articles. I mean, you may have some POP that's used as a flame retardant in plastic. That plastic is then used to make a wire connector in a car, and then a car gets sent around the world and used, and eventually it turns up as waste. So how do you identify at that end of life stage that you may have some POP and an element of that? So that's work that we just really started on, is how to better identify and trace POPs in articles through the value chain.
Great, thank you so much. I'm just going to check if the back of the room can hear us. Is it okay? Okay, great. Otherwise, we'll keep the mic a bit closer to us. Well, you immediately were thinking of some examples, perhaps for a very quick answer from all of you. Are there any chemicals and waste management topics that you believe need a more robust science policy consideration to raise awareness and drive action? Anything that you want to bring to the fore, Monica?
Actually a big question. So I would say under Minamata Convention, obviously there has not been any discussion or scoping of what could be areas where we would benefit from future support in terms of providing science. And I will take advantage of that. I'm not constrained by any guidance yet from the parties. And I would say what I see is happening is that, of course, there is quite a lot of science on mercury, especially impacts on human health and overall chemicals and impacts on human health. However, as far as impact on environment, and basically it means on biodiversity, is concerned, there is considerably less information, including cumulative impacts. In our convention, the mandate is to work to protect people in vulnerable situations, so impacts on health of indigenous peoples, women and girls in the specific circumstances in an area where I think requires some consolidated and more science to support policy making. As far as mercury is concerned, I'm also thinking because it's present with mining, with production of different products in processes and emissions, it's contaminated sites, it's across the many topics that it's useful to be able to place mercury against a variety of pressures on the environment and variety of issues. So I could picture how mercury could be part of any sectorial analysis related to health or mining, or could be one of the pollutants in a larger assessment. So let me finish here, and I would think that that would be maybe upcoming task to Minamata Convention to start defining or identifying areas where we would be useful to receive some science, and even to identify such a policy needs is exercise interesting on its own that can benefit our processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, any other quick answers or thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think for us, Brazil is the biggest consumer of pesticides in the world. You know, we love to talk about soccer, how we're ours in the top 3, you know, and how a Brazilian won the world championship on ping pong in China last week, which is a very interesting thing. But we don't know how much the impacts. We never measure too much pesticides, especially how they degraded and accumulate in the environment, in the water. So PFAS is right now one of the pollutants that we want to measure more. Most of the water in Brazil has already been contaminated. like we did the monitoring for the mercury under the Yanomami communities a couple, 2 years ago and last year. Now we're expanding, and we saw that the contamination of most of those indigenous communities much higher than we thought, and it's possible. So how we can get science even to try to reverse those contaminations. I think this is something that it really interests us.
Thank you. And Peter, would you like to chip in, or can I already feed you another question?
Oh, yeah, I think I'll just add to what Monica suggested there. So one of the key areas where we could see value is the linkages between the chemicals management and biodiversity management. We heard a lot in the contact group on chlorpyrifos this morning about effects of pesticide use on biodiversity, and there are similar targets and actions under the CBD convention relating to biodiversity and management of pesticides. So some integration of these functions under different conventions would be very valid.
Thanks very much. And yes, I know this was a question that was actually really big, but thanks for coming up with some concise initial thinking. Monica, maybe then back to you. In what ways do you think a dedicated science policy panel could enhance the efforts of the Minamata Convention in addressing chemicals and waste challenges? So in other words, what do you see as some of the benefits of having the panel?
Well, I would start by saying that I've not seen assessment products or processes of that kind not benefiting MEA. I think that's the value which it brings. I would also like to reflect that often there is too much expectation that a big assessment product could land on one single COP and make a difference. It has to be really process and continuous interface through various channels. I already mentioned that formulating policy in it is an interesting process in itself for any MEA. So I'm looking forward if Minamata could start doing that. And I would also then say an important outcome of any assessment process would be to indicate where we need more research. I think there is a scientific community there which will be very responsive to such a demand, and we can really direct research done by national government, different institutes, bilateral funding, whatever, to focus on what MEA see as a priority. So I'm really looking forward into being able to start such a collaboration with research community. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Peter, looking at you now, how might the scientific bodies, the POPROC, the CRC Implementation and Compliance Committee, benefit from engaging with the proposed functions and proposed panel? Any thoughts from your end how it can support the ongoing work?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, I'm not very knowledgeable exactly yet how the science panel, policy panel is going to function, but I think we already heard some of this from the INGA, that the bodies like the POPROC and the CRC are very focused on the tasks, the mandates that are given to them under the convention, and they are actually very short on resources in terms of time, especially of time, and also in some cases on expertise. So, you know, we only have a certain amount of time every year to work on the topics that are put before us. And when we have these issues that I mentioned earlier that we have looked into, long-range environmental transport of plastic additives, climate change interactions, and so on, we can really only sort of scratch the surface of using the expertise that we have. So if some other much more resource panel can focus on those activities and do more in-depth studies, and then, you know, provide the results of that such that body like the POPROC can use it, that would certainly something of great benefit, I would see. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, did you want to add in? Oh, okay. Then I think I might pose the last question to you, Adalberto. What specific benefits do you anticipate for your country from the establishment of a science policy panel and its proposed functions?
Well, for sure, to get access to the best science available, independent science that we can trust, that can help us to move our agendas. We approved last year a bill to create the National Inventory of Chemicals. We also approved earlier this year our ROS normative. I know we are 20 years late from Europe, but well, we finally were able to approve this year. And we are trying to deliver now our PRTR system, our pollutant transfer and release system. So we have all these things at the same time, but it's never very easy to know where to focus and what to do and, where to concentrate our efforts. Imagine we estimate we have 15,000 chemical substances in Brazil. So after we deliver the inventory, imagine if we have to evaluate one by one, think about hazard, exposition, what measures we're going to do. So we need to access the best science available. We need cooperation with international agencies and organizations that we can get this data automatically to help us. That's why we recreated the CONASC, which is our National Commission on Chemical Safety, which brings universities, civil society, also the private sector. And this new commission has been helping us to do a lot of things. Just because we sit down all together in the same room and we debate, based on the best science available at that moment, where should we prioritize? So I'm really positive that a panel like that would also help countries like Brazil and others to have capacity building and development of science locally, so under our circumstances, but of course to know where to start, where to prioritize, and how to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think there's more thoughts probably in the room on this as well. I also see a number of familiar faces. So I would like to find out, is there anyone who has any question for our panelists from the audience here in Geneva? As I mentioned, I do see some familiar faces. Actually, one is getting onto a selfie just now, but Linroy, I was wondering, you know the science policy panel process very well because you're on the bureau, but you're also very engaged in the effectiveness evaluation group at the moment. Would you have any thoughts to contribute on how you see the relevance of the panel kicking in for the conventions?
Okay, well, thanks for interrupting my photo, but no, but seriously, yes, pleasure to have this discussion and being a part of the science policy process, and also the first two effectiveness evaluations on the Stockholm Convention, and now the first effectiveness for the Minamata Convention, seeing the importance of science and the lack of data that exists, particularly within certain regions. The region that I'm from, Latin America and the Caribbean, we do have data gaps there. And within the evaluation itself, one of the main outcomes would be that their implementation at the national level is one of the biggest challenges. So therefore, if we can provide enough data, enough science to support policy at the national level, this would be extremely important. So the science policy panel, I think, can bridge quite a few of these gaps and to produce outcomes that, or outputs that the various treaties could utilize. Of course, between Stockholm and Minamata, there are differences in how scientific data is generated, utilized, and analyzed. And within that, the science policy panel, I think, can have quite a great impact within the Minamata Convention, not to slight Stockholm or anything else, but there are processes within the Minamata Convention that could really benefit from outputs from such a panel. So, looking forward to, of course, scientists from within our region, and this has been pointed out, being able to develop science from within the tropical region as well, and to address some of these gaps and to develop young scientists within the region. It is an excellent opportunity. So, we look forward to what comes out of SPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linroy. Very helpful insights from your perspective. I see a hand just before you. Yes, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much for the floor. My name is Nancy Marango from Kenya. I have a question about alternative technologies. What specific technologies will work within cross-border interventions? Is it big data? Is it machine learning? Is it artificial intelligence? And how are our systems agile and capable to ensure that technology works for all of us and it does not divide us? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Let me see if there's any other final question from the audience here. I was about to say I see none. Yes, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Miriam Diamond, Chemicals and Waste person on the Scientific and Technical Advisory Panel to the CHEF and also University of Toronto, and member of the IPCP International Panel on Chemical Pollution. And now I'll get to my question. So we know that the panel cannot be policy prescriptive, but it can indicate directions towards policy. What do you think about policy-oriented assessments as part of the work of the panel?
Thank you very much for both questions. I'm going to turn to the panelists and see if Monica would like to.
I will start and hope my colleagues will complement and maybe follow up on the latest question about the policy options or having some elements of policies in the advice given by a future panel. And one topic I'm thinking of is the artisanal and small-scale gold mining, where convention currently offers or requires parties to work on it based on certain solution. And it's to have a plan, to formalize, and so on and so forth. But I'm thinking over time, we would need to see whether it works or whether we need a certain mix of measures. And I think in that area, science can really help us because it's a question of technology, it's a question of social aspects of economy. It's very complex. And I would definitely see a role for science to come up with some evidence which mix of measures of policies works best against certain circumstances. So I would see benefit of including some of it, not prescribing, but not to shy away, not to touch upon it at all.
Thanks very much, Monica. Alberto?
Yes, no, briefly, Minister Marina Silva, our Minister of Environment and Climate Change, she has been pushing us a lot to do public policies based on evidence, based on science. And she always tells us that even more important than the result is the process in which we create that policy. So how we explain people why we are doing it. And here, for example, at the BRS, we can, we always have sectors that are somehow affected. The cotton industry, if you have, carbosulfan and the certification we do, or the industry that produce paper, because, if you have sulfuramide and the impact, this and that, and all of them always think about the economical impact on their own. So having these panels and this science helping us, help us to drive, say, I know the economic impacts are here. We're going to do a transition. We're going to go together. We're not going to leave no one behind. But besides the economical, there's the social and the environment. So we need to go everybody together. So maybe that's why I think the question on innovation and where this new technologies will help us, because the challenges are so large and there's so many things happening at the same time that sometimes it's not easy to us to understand, this have that result, this impact, and that's the thing, the issue we need, the causal effect that we need to solve. So I think innovation and bringing the stakeholders together can probably help if we bring this new, let's say, artificial intelligence or new tools or new cooperation, then can help us to see where to go. And then it's easier to explain to our society why we are taking or why we want to take some decisions, so that even if the result is not there, because unfortunately the political momentum didn't allow, but at least the process was transparent. And one day or the other, they will take up that process and will continue to move. when the window of opportunity for the technical guys to move on their agenda appears.
Thank you very much. And Peter, would you like to add anything to that?
I don't really have a lot to add to what Alberto just said, but certainly in the response to the question on innovation and alternative technologies, that there are obviously with respect to like pesticide management and looking at the Rotterdam and the Stockholm Convention, there are a lot of innovative technologies on remote delivery vehicles of the pesticides, which avoids human contact with the pesticide. You have some machine learning capabilities there, so the machine can learn how to differentiate between putting the pesticide on the crop versus the weed. Then under the Basel Convention, we do obviously have to look at some more innovative ways of destroying POPs waste. Some of the technologies that we have written in the Basel guidelines now are very old and outdated, and new technologies haven't been fully explored and incorporated in that. So yes, certainly always we must have our minds open to innovation and moving with the times.
Thank you very much. And colleagues, we started a little late, but you certainly have now how do we say this? We didn't outcrowd the reception, but at least I think our volumes are now higher than the ones in the reception space. So I think at this point, we really should give a big clap to our panel and thank them very, very much for sharing their insights. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and being with us today. We will then move to the third and final segment of this side event. And I would like to invite Alejandro Nairo, the Director General Environmental Quality and Assessment of the Ministry of Environment of Uruguay, to come to the podium. Mr. Gudi Alkemade, the Chair of the Ad Hoc Open-Ended Working Group for the SPP. And I would like to also invite Ambassador Jackson to please come to the podium, Economic Ambassador and Deputy Permanent Representative to the World Trade Organization. And before I invite you to give your final thoughts, I first would like to give the podium to our host for the upcoming meeting, OEW 3.2 in Uruguay. Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tessa, and the organization for the invitation and for the efforts that you made to put forward the meeting in Uruguay. Sorry. Your work is essential in moving the science policy panel forward and ensuring that all regions have a voice in its development. We think it's very important, the presence of all the region. There are different realities, and your effort is very important for that. As you discussed, promoting the SPP, the new baby as has born, is not only a technical or institutional task. It is a shared opportunity to strengthen the science policy interface and foster more inclusive, evidence-based environmental action. Uruguay is both ready and engaged to host an SPP-related event. We believe it could serve as a meaningful platform to enhance regional dialogue, showcase local leadership, and build bridges between science, policy, and society. We invite you all to travel to Uruguay, a country not only known for its quality of life, natural beauty, and hospitality, but also for its leadership and environmental issues. Come and be part of this important discussion and experience our land, our people, and our culture. See you in Uruguay for this important meeting.
Thank you. And really, the thanks goes to you for hosting graciously that very important meeting, or I should say meetings. Thank you. Then I would like to invite Ms. Gudi Alkemade the chair of the SPP OEW Bureau to share with us her closing remarks.
Thank you, Tessa. And let me first start with thanking everyone who was involved in organizing this event. I think it comes timely, as some of us have said, and I too see familiar faces. So thank you also, all of you, for joining this, because without you, I don't think we have an event. But most of all, I would like to thank the panel for sharing, their perspectives, but also contributing in sharing their thoughts on examples why a panel could be relevant. And I was listening and I was thinking, maybe it's not a coincidence that we are in this exhibition room to make the invisible visible. And I think that is actually what you did. You illustrated what is the need, but also what is the potential of a science policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution. In other words, you help to make this visible. As we are preparing for our work in Uruguay to finalize the proposal, and really thank you very much for offering to host us, I'm really confident that we can deliver on the promise of the panel. To help us to be better informed in our decisions, our actions, but also in our cooperation for a healthy and sustainable environment. It is in our hands to lay the right foundations, and it's just up to us to focus on the essential elements that we have identified for our works, and work together to come with the solutions that are necessary to agree to a solid base for the panel. Before it can be established and start its work. And so that we can have a solid base that responds to the needs that are identified, has the right expertise and knowledge base, and through its functions is relevant and works for all. I think I just want to end by saying that only with teamwork we can make our dream work. And I really look forward to working with you all to finalize our work and start the panel and get into the next phase of our work. And thank you.
Thank you. And to realize our dream. Thank you very much. And last but not least, I am very pleased to share the podium with our representative of our co-organizer, the government of the UK, Ambassador Andrew Jackson. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a special privilege, but also a bit of a responsibility to be the last speaker in the evening. But I'd just like to echo the thanks to all of you for staying through what's been a really interesting discussion. As you can see in the title, I'm probably the one person in the room who can't claim any credit for the fantastic work that you're doing on these particular subjects. But my role here in Geneva is delivering for the UK across all of the UN institutions and the World Trade Organization in the economic and technology space. And one thing I really believe that I think has also come out of tonight's discussion is how all of our institutions work better when we start making the linkages, when we start taking advantage of the collective knowledge that all of you have got and participants in the different institutions, the results gets better. And the scientists among you don't need me to tell you that when you get more scientists together, more research, more evidence, the quality of the advice gets better as well. And I think these are just a few reasons why you're going to go from strength to strength when you get this new panel established. And from the UK's point of view, and my colleagues who are the experts in these particular conventions and will be here with you for these 2 weeks, the reason that we've been very pleased to co-sponsor this process is because we see so importantly the role of science in policy making at the national and at the international level. And our speakers this evening have illustrated some very specific examples: the pesticides in Brazil, the impacts, the costs of not using the science. I think that's come over really strongly. And it's actually, for me, not working on this panel at the moment, been quite inspiring to hear from all of you of what can be achieved when you come together and add a panel that, as the Executive Secretary said at the start, Executive Director Anderson, it's going to get the best out of all of the conventions. All of you are going to benefit. All of the member countries are going to benefit. So my closing thought, really, having listened to this and followed some of your work, is first of all, you have actually made some brilliant progress, and I think that's particularly thanks to you both. Since 2022, when the resolution decided you needed this panel. So it's worth hanging on in there. The second one is actually you've got a bit of a responsibility in Uruguay to get us over the line. I'm sorry that I won't be there, pero he tenido el placer de conocer su país. Uruguay is more beautiful even than his modest description, so I hope you will get there. But that will be what brings to a culmination this process of bringing together all of the expertise. So it's really worth going for that prize. And the other one, if I'm allowed to be a little bit undiplomatic, I think I picked up that you might be a year late. You wanted to do this year. So we know sometimes these takes longer, but the effort is worthwhile. And so I'd really like to encourage you all to get to that success and to assure you that the UK will be right behind you. And our scientists and other organizations that we'll bring together will really look forward to making the impact. And I'm not sure if you're going to come in again, but if I am the very last speaker, just to really stress the thanks to Gudi Almeida and Director General Nairo for the work that I know you'll be doing in Uruguay, and for all the work that you and all the members of the Secretariat and all the delegates have been doing this far. So thank you for inviting me, and very good luck, and it's really worth the effort.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you so much, closing and opening speakers, I should say, panelists, participants. We have come to the end of this event, but we really appreciate your interest, your dedication, and the wonderful insights and inspiring words that you have shared with us. Thank you all very much. We wish you a very good COP here, and we hope to see many of you in Uruguay. Thank you.